Hello, everyone. Welcome to Top Steps SuiteProjects Pro April 2025 release overview. Thank you for joining today. Also, I'm Ron Bro, CEO. So let's get into it. So, flying over the release, here are some of the items we're going to be reviewing today. We'll look at some global updates, some of the project-specific updates, some of the resourcing updates, invoicing, mobile app, overall platform, and NetSuite Connector. The big thing with this release is the huge news that came out at SuiteWorld last year around the rebranding of OpenAir to SuiteProjects Pro. And as you can all imagine, there was a considerable effort on the back end for that to happen in a time period that made sense. And this was all completed in January. So a lot of the release might seem unexciting to a lot of us, but a lot of the effort by this product team was really focused on that rebranding effort and basically the name change, which, as you can imagine, was a lot of work. So there are some foundational changes that will be continually improved upon, but I'm excited to show you some of the things that are part of this release. The big news came out. It's with the global search, which we were all very excited about in the last release, sort of mimicking the NetSuite global search option, but it was very limited. It was limited to clients, projects, and users only. And so now the global search has been expanded as promised, and it is including now the ability to search bookings, documents, expense reports, receipts, tasks, and workspaces. So this is all controllable by your administrator. So if you want to say we don't use bookings or we don't store documents, you can enable or disable the ability for the global search to pull that data in. But they're continually promised to expand this global search, and certainly they've come through this release. One other note on the global search, you can actually now enter the internal ID of a project and pull that project up without any sort of text. And this is really great because we do custom lookups by ID all the time when we're working with our clients, and not having to have a custom lookup but able to use the global search will save a lot of time. So being able to just put in the ID, pull the project up is good in our book for sure. Next gen homepage, again, new release for the last release. They're improving it a little this time. They've added the ability to add line charts, bar charts, and pie charts. So continual improvements there. And they've also added some other interesting items. So you can actually now embed reports in general on the generation homepage, and you can have actions around those reports by running it, editing it. The list portlet has now a total row. So if you are running a report or looking at a list, you can now see the number of items in the list that are visible and the overall number of items that are in the list overall. And if you start working on a portlet item, but you end up abandoning it, it will warn you that you will need to keep editing or discard whatever changes you've made. So some nice improvements, I think. Minor changes you'll see throughout this due to the Redwood effort. The to-do list was a nice add last year. They've basically reorganizing it so it's more comprehensive. So if there's timesheet reminders, they're grouping them together. If there's expense reminders, there's grouping them together. So rather than having random items listed, they actually now have a bit of a grouping that makes it a little more easier to find quickly what you're looking to take action on. Also, we've been told that we'll talk about the mobile in our next couple of slides, but in the mobile 5.3, which 5.2 is what's currently released, they're going to be adding the to-do feature as part of that update to the mobile. So we look forward to seeing that as well. It's also available For those of you that have SuiteProjects Pro and NetSuite, if you're embedding where you can see all the data in NetSuite from SuiteProjects Pro, that is now to-do list is available there. As I mentioned, Redwood Experience continues to tweak some of the views. The more modern user menu, you might have noticed it's a little different, hopefully a little simpler to read and use. Also, they've moved the newsfeed panel over a bit to make it a little also more user-friendly as well. So again, Redwood Experience continues to make some improvements to the SPP interface. Probably the biggest release item in this last release was the announcement for project discussions. This basically is something that you can turn on in your own account under project application settings and other settings. It's at the very bottom of the settings page. I enabled this in our Top Step account. And it basically allows you to go to a project and be able to start a single discussion and have people contribute. So I think this is the beginnings of something that's going to be very useful today. But today it's just a very rudimentary. There's no reply. It's basically a list of discussions. So stay tuned for this one because I see big things, big opportunities here as they go forward. But for this initial review, it's basically just a line by line discussion back and forth. And you can only have one per project. And when you turn it on, it does show up as a global up at the top of the page. So if you want to look at all the discussions across all projects and then be able to see those, you can see those there in that list view. This one, I believe, went under the radar, and I believe it's very important release item for a lot of our customers. With 606 compliance, we've seen a lot of customers migrating towards percent complete revenue recognition, and we've helped a lot of customers make that transition. And there's a couple of different revenue recognition rules to handle percent complete. Incurred versus forecast is a very popular one because it allows you to use bookings rather than project assignments or tasks. And a lot of customers are moving towards more of a booking model. But also, if you want to factor in cost of the resources as part of this percent complete method, it allows you to do that. The one warning I always tell customers when we're implementing this and cost is involved is it becomes a bit of an audit nightmare to see what cost was used at the point of revenue being taken. And they've actually figured out a clever way to solve for this. There are some custom fields that can be added to the revenue recognition transaction form. And by adding these fields, when you generate revenue from this incurred revenue rule, they'll actually store the cutoff date, the amount to be recognized, the hours it's using, the future booked hours, the cost from the resources, etc. All of the key elements that go into the calculation of the revenue can be stored on the transaction. So now when an audit is brought up and you need to be able to say, well, how did you take that amount of revenue? You can now go in and have backup to what was going on at the time you ran revenue that generated and contributed to the generation of that amount of revenue. So pretty cool. We have a lot of customers that we're working with. I'll go ahead and put this in place. Sorry, I went the wrong way. The fields that are needed to support this are very specific. I'm sure they're available in Suite Answers, but there are very specific fields that you'll need to add to the revenue transaction record, and then those will allow the fields to get set. So this is a few of the fields here, and then here's some more fields that need to be that can be added to the transaction. So again, it's very specific audience that will benefit from this, but I do see it as a big improvement for those customers and for future customers as 606 continues to be adopted. Another interesting ad that went a little bit under the radar, I think, is this native field that's been generated called originating ID. And what is the benefit of this? Well, it's added to both the project and the project task. And the benefit here is we get questions from our customers saying, where did this project come from? Was it created from another project? And it's very difficult to back into where the project came or where the task came from. Now we have this originating ID field that's hidden but available that can now store the ID of the project that the project originally came from or from the task. So if you are looking to track, where projects created from, where tasks are coming from, this is a pretty cool feature that allows you to track that without much effort and could be very useful. Advanced booking worksheet op changes. They've added some additional granularity for booking period by role. So on a role by role basis, you can limit what periods that a user can select when running the booking worksheet. This could be very helpful because if you're focusing on monthly bookings and you want your resources and you want to force everyone to do monthly or you want to force everyone to do weekly, you can take away other options and force the booking worksheet to only be able to be working by certain periods. Now, one of the downsides I'm not thrilled about with this release item is it doesn't take away the option in the dropdown. So if you take away daily across the org and someone tries to add daily and hit save, they're going to get an error. So it is still visible in the UI, but they will be forced to select something other than daily before they can save the settings of the worksheet. So something to keep in mind if you want to put this in place. And obviously, you cannot disable all periods. So at least one period has to be available for the worksheet to be usable. So be mindful of that as well. You will get an error if you unselect all the different period choices. This also, I think, is a little bit under the radar. We've had this request from other customers, and this is basically another parole permission that this allows the use of bulk actions in the invoice list view. So you might say, why would this be relevant? Well, imagine you using invoicing in SPP and you've got project managers who are approving, and maybe some of them are just blindly approving. They're just grabbing all of their invoices and just bulk approving them without looking at them. And you don't want that. You want to force them to open each invoice, review the invoice details, and then, approve or reject at that point. Well, this is what this is for. This will basically forces the approval process to basically allow not to take away the bulk action and force the one-by-one invoice approval. So this is something I could see a lot of customers potentially pivoting to in order to force that more aggressive and more thorough approval process in place. Mobile 5.2. So they're investing in the mobile app for timesheets and expenses. And they've added the concept of a template. So you can create a timesheet now and then save that timesheet as a template in the mobile app. And I would like to see this hopefully within the UI at some point, but at least in the mobile app. And then have that as a template that you can use a couple of different ways in creating or updating your timesheet. So let's say every week you end up, putting 4 hours a day for training, and you don't want to hand enter it every day. You could create a template for that and then save it. And then when you're creating your new timesheet, there's a couple of different options. You can open a new timesheet and then select add time from template. So it'll pull in those 4 hours a day directly into your timesheet, and you can add in the other information needed. Or you can actually go to the template, select the template so you can have multiple templates, and then you can create your timesheet from the template. So there's a couple of different ways to benefit from these templates. But so hopefully, I think this is kind of the beginning of hopefully adding this sort of functionality in the UI itself, in addition to the mobile. Um, a few of the less exciting enhancements around the NetSuite connector. Obviously, for those that are integrated between SuiteProjects Pro and NetSuite, there's all these bundles that are needed to enable the integration, and the word OpenAir is embedded throughout. And so there was a lot of updates to the bundles, updated versions to basically replace OpenAir with SuiteProjects Pro throughout the integration, as well as single sign-on, as well as the real-time add-on bundle and the ARM bundle for advanced revenue management. So again, not very exciting, but necessary to kind of initially clean up the complete rebranding of OpenAir to SuiteProjects Pro. One thing that I could see some of our customers benefiting from is this changes to the real-time record import. So you have options to bring over customers, projects, and users as real-time, and rather than having to wait for the batch integration to run. However, if the record was updated or created by a script or an integration, that does not trigger the real-time integration previously. So you would have to still wait for the integration to run, the batch integration to run, for those records to come over. Well, this last release allows you to trigger real-time the integration when the NetSuite records are updated by any SOAP API or any RESTlets. So now we don't have to wait for the integration. If you integrated with like with a CRM and it's creating objects in NetSuite, you want those pushed over to SPP, we don't have to wait for the batch. You can enable the real time here. So again, it adds some different factors and features here in the real time SPP integration records, which could be beneficial. Again, not that sexy, but they've added some XML and some SOAP API actions that can now be taken by submitting, approving, or rejecting schedule requests. We see this a lot with when we're integrating for our HR systems with our customers. They want to bring in schedule requests, and then they want to be able to submit those for approval potentially, and we normally can't do that. This gives us a little more flexibility on integrating and actions we can take there. Also, it's added some additional logging for any modifications, upserts, or deletions of an invoice payment by being able to record it in the history tab of the invoice. So if you're migrating or updating payment records via XML or SOAP, you will now have that. Previously, there was no record of when it was done and where or how, and now that is captured as part of the invoice history. And we do this a lot when we're loading historical data for our clients. And then I believe this is last but not least, they're continually to slowly expand the REST API functionality. They've added bookings. It's a get only at this point, but that's the beginning of any time they've added any additional objects. The get is always the first to add, so I expect that we will get more featured functionality in future releases. But now we can read the bookings table through the REST API. And there's a few other minor things in the release, but these are the ones that we felt were impactful to customers to consider whether they might be able to benefit or not. Well, again, thank you all for joining, and we look forward to seeing you at the next webinar for the next release. Everyone have a great day. Thank you.